Hello, everyone. Welcome to the International Younger Chemists Network workshop series on professional development skills. My name is Fatima Mustafa, and I'll be co-hosting this event along with my colleague, Tracy. Tracy, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Tracy Lau. I am an IYCN Conference President's Committee member, and I'm glad to see you all.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Tracy. Thank you all for our audience for joining from different time zones and from all around the world. Thank you for amazing guest speakers for accepting our invitation and who joined us today. We will be talking about non-traditional career path in chemistry. That's a topic that is many younger chemists are interested to learn more about. That chemistry usually provide many and diverse career paths, and some of them they are away from bench. So we are here today to host and talk to amazing speakers from patent intellectual property. We have Dr. Lucy Padget from UK. We have Dr. Marisa Quantero, who is a medical writer, and we have a Cristian Aviles-Martin, who is a technical consultant. And we, at the end of the program, will be having a panel discussion. So if you have any questions for our speakers, please submit it in the chat. We'll be happy to address those during the panel discussion before wrapping up with the closing remarks. Let me introduce you here briefly to the International Younger Chemists Network. So the IYCN is an organization that is affiliated by the IUPAC. It was established in 2017. The vision of the IYCN is to connect and empower younger chemists globally. Membership is free, so if you are a younger chemist, 35 years or younger, or pursuing a degree in chemistry, or within 5 years from your graduation or last degree, you are definitely eligible to be a member. Membership is free, so please visit our website to learn more about us, about our events, our programs, and also to fill out the membership form if you are interested to become a member. Also, you can follow us on social media to know more about our programs. So why we are here today? We are actually, I'm personally fascinated by the diversity of careers that a chemist would pursue, and these skill set, how it could be implemented in many ways. So as a chemist, you could be part of many sectors. It could be part of industrial, academic, government, nonprofit, and even start your own business. Also, as a chemist, you could be part of many disciplines, technical discipline. You could be in organic, inorganic, analytical, physical, polymer chemistry, biochemistry, and many more. Also, some of these careers could be bench-based, so you could do basic research and development, quality control, manufacturing. Also, you could be away from bench. So jobs or careers like management, marketing, consulting, safety, science, policy, science, communication, and outreach could be those kind of topics that could be away from bench. And also, these careers could be in many applied areas. Think about food, agriculture, paints, medicine, plastic, petroleum. It's actually everywhere, anywhere. So you just name it, you will find a chemist. Here in the IYCN at the beginning, we thought, well, sometimes early career chemists and specialist students are hesitant where to go. And they were, okay, I have this skill set in chemistry, but it's a lot. We can do a lot of things here as a chemist. So where should we go? At the IYCN, we thought, well, let's plan for something for to guide early career chemists and let them know about the diversity in career paths in chemistry. That's when we started actually this professional development series. We had already organized a diversity in career paths in chemistry workshop. So you can go to our IUPAC YouTube channel and check this workshop where we met with real-life chemists in academia, industry, and government, so you can learn from them. As well as there is another Chem Voices presentation where we actually hosted chemists away from bench, from management, science outreach, and science policy as well. In today's workshop, we're happy to host other Non-traditional chemist, we have here Dr. Marisa Quantero, who is a medical writer, along with her entrepreneurial and biochemistry and virology experience. And also we have Dr. Lucy Padget, who has combined chemistry and law. And also we have Dr. to be Cristian Aviles-Martin, who is a technical consultant, and we're super excited to learn from all of them in this workshop. So as I mentioned, we will start with talks of each of the presenters, and then after that we will be having the Q&A session. We will start with our first presenter, Lucy Padget, who is a patent attorney and a partner at Alembia Intellectual Property in the UK. Dr. Lucy has worked in intellectual property for 25 years now, following a brief stint as a synthetic chemist. She started her IP career in-house with AstraZeneca IP team and now works in a private practice for her own firm, Alembia. She has a degree in chemistry from Oxford University and is a chartered UK and European patent attorney specialized in life sciences, chemistry, and pharmaceuticals. She also worked in the US for a few years, during which she also qualified as a US patent agent. Her experience covers the lifespan of a patent, including drafting, prosecuting, litigating, and business development activities. And she has also worked on numerous early programs right through to key on-market products. So I'll be happy to have Lucy Padget. Without further ado, Lucy, would you please share your screen?
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Can you hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic. And can you just confirm you can see the slides, Fatima?
Well, not yet.
Okay, it says I'm sharing.
I see the slides.
Okay, perfect. Very good. Well, thank you very much for having me. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are. Oh, now I've lost the slides again. Just hang on a second.
Should be fine. I still see.
You do?
Yeah.
Okay, hang on 1 second. I cannot see them at all. Right, there we go. Okay, can you see them?
Correct. See.
Okay, I'm so sorry. I think we might have some network gremlins. Okay, let's get started. So as I said, my name's Lucy Padget, and I won't bore you all with my sort of complete journey from bench to patent attorney, but I thought it might be worth, given that you'll be at separate stages of your particular journey, kind of just telling you how I ended up here. So I have a first degree in chemistry, and actually I don't have a PhD. So thank you, Fatima, for granting me one in the introduction. But actually I don't have a PhD. And when I came to the end of my degree at Oxford, I was a bit rudderless really, and I didn't really know where I was going to go with this. I knew that I didn't want to leave chemistry completely behind, but I wasn't quite sure what I was going to do with it. I was quite fortunate to get a job as a synthetic chemist at Zeneca, as it was one of the precursor companies to AstraZeneca. Whilst I was there, basically what we did was make compounds that would ultimately become pharmaceuticals. Because I didn't have a PhD, I could have happily stayed doing that job for the rest of my career, but the idea of doing sort of the same thing day in, day out, for me personally, didn't really appeal, and I knew I was going to want to get something a bit more out of my career than just that. So I toyed with the idea of becoming a barrister. I've always quite been interested in the law and the application of the law, and I thought that would be really fascinating. I knew I was going to have to retrain, and just as I was on the verge of making a big decision about do I stop work and go back to university and retrain completely, an opportunity came up to join the Intellectual Property Department as a trainee patent attorney. That to me just looked absolutely perfect. That kept the balance of chemistry and the things that I really didn't want to leave behind, and introduced the concept of the law as well. So that was absolutely perfect, and I was very fortunate to get that job. So I joined in '97 as a trainee. I took about 5 years to qualify, as I'll come to. That's quite standard in the UK journey. I had a brief stint after I qualified to Waltham in Massachusetts, during which time I also qualified as a US patent agent. I believe you've been talked to before by a US patent agent or a patent attorney. The system in the US is very different to the UK, and patent attorneys in the in the US are those who've been to law school. Patent agents, like patent attorneys, do the patent bar, and actually, in fact, patent agents can do an awful lot in the US, even if they haven't been to law school. So it felt to me at the time to sort of be worth doing that as well and get a bit more experience actually practicing in front of the USPTO. So I did that. And then in the final part of my career at AZ, I was the senior patent attorney responsible for AZ's oncology small molecule portfolio. AZ exited the northwest of the UK and moved to Cambridge, and as part of that I took redundancy, and myself and a fellow chap from my group started Alembia in 2017, and we are now almost 5 years old. I'm quite proud of that. 5 years and one pandemic, as I pointed out earlier on, which is no mean feat for any business holder. In the unlikely event you want to know a bit more about me, there was a Chemistry World article a while ago, 2 or 3 years ago, I think, about the career from chemist to patent attorney. So if anybody else is really thinking about that as a career, it might be worth 2 seconds of your time flicking through that article. The link's here on the bottom. So what does a patent attorney do? In essence, sort of many facets of job. Traditionally, people overjob is really fascinating thing of actually, and it is. People think the patent file patents, and whilst we do that, that actually turns out to be quite a very small part of it these days. So the most thing that we do is offer advice. The patent systems exist; they exist all around the world, but the exact application to that patent system and what's right for each client's business is a real art. And so a lot of the time we're doing is kind of working with clients, working with our in-house colleagues, if that's the role that you have, and basically offering advice and helping to develop a strategy and come up with the best way of protecting some client's IP, or the best way of navigating around an issue, or or an infringement possibility, or that sort of thing. And so talking and advice is a major part of the job, and you have to be very careful, very comfortable as a patent attorney working in what we call the grey zone. And that's because most of the time there is no right or wrong answer to this. The law says something is patentable if, amongst other things, it's new, but exactly what constitutes new can be surprisingly difficult to sometimes get to the bottom of. And so a lot of time you're trying to advise, there is no answer, and you're trying to advise the clients where that basically it could be this, it could be this. On balance of probability and my experience, I think it's going to be X, but I can't tell you if that's definitely going to be true. So that's a large part of the job. And then, of course, we're drafting patents. So we're taking the technical inventions, usually, as a chemist, those made in the lab, and we're writing those up into legal documents. There's a large amount of sort of skill and training involved in that. So if anyone's ever tried to look at a patent document, it's not written in plain English, and there are very good reasons why they're not, and it can appear very repetitive, and there are very good reasons why it is appearing repetitive. And so there's a lot of experience that goes into putting those things together in order that you do the best possible job for a client who has an invention, maybe not the invention the client thinks it is, and being able to draft it such that you may be able to score protection for them across the world under different patent jurisdictions. Patent drafting, everybody thinks that's the kind of end of the process. You file your patent application, you get a patent. That is really not the case. Once you filed a patent application, you spend an awful lot of time arguing with patent offices around the world that the patent application satisfies all the legal requirements of being new and inventive and useful, etc. If you work in a pharmaceutical company and you filed a patent application all around the world, this can be a huge part of your job, because every single patent office will conjure up its own objections. Some will be substantive, some will be formal, and you have to comply with all of those to get your patent actually through to the point where you can call it a patent and it is granted. And so an awful lot of letter writing and argumentation. Patent litigation is another facet of the job. I personally have spent a large amount of the last sort of 6 to 8 years doing that for a global oncology brand, both inside in-house and externally. It's what happens at the end of the road if you have a very successful what happens is basically somebody tries to copy your invention and basically you essentially go to court and say that these people are infringing your patents. They then counterclaim typically that your patents are invalid, so it doesn't matter whether they're infringing them or not because the patents should never have been granted, and then you all end up in court arguing this. Every court system is different, and you know, sometimes all of those cases are heard under one umbrella, sometimes they're separated. If you're talking about injunctions, those things can be very fast and furious, and you can end up in court really, really quickly, depending on the on the system. But this is really fascinating part of the job where you've become very, very expert in perhaps one or two references, and the way that your patent is valid over those references. You spend a large amount of time sort of turning that knowledge and translating that into different patent jurisdictions around the world, so that your counsel on the ground in those jurisdictions can use those arguments and in defense of your patent. So that's a really, really interesting part of the job if you get lucky enough. Hopefully you can still hear me. I just got a message saying that the audio connection was lost. Anyway, I'm going to carry on. Hopefully you can hear me. So lots and lots of different skills involved in this. From basically a lot of people skills involved, but also legal skills, strategic thinking. There's lots of training involved with this, communicating. When it comes to the patent prosecution and arguing with patent offices around the world, you have to be able to take sometimes very complex legal or complex technical issues and put those into concise forms of communication that you can sort of write to an agent on the ground and can be translated to a patent office and local offices. There's quite a skill with that, of being able to succinctly put some quite complex issues in on paper and find them persuasive. Again, sort of similar sort of skills in patent litigation and transactional work. Transactional work can be really interesting if you're trying to sell something and figure out what the other person to the bargain actually wants, and to try and give them what they want without giving too much of your client's property away. There's a lot of bargaining and a lot of interesting sort of dialogue that goes alongside transactional work. That can be a really interesting facet of the job. Is a patent attorney career for me? So I personally would say that it's very fascinating and varied. It is hugely varied, actually. As I said at the beginning, for me personally, I wanted it to be STEM related. I wanted it to be chemistry related, but it isn't in the lab base, so that ticks all the boxes for me. It's very commercial and very legally focused. You know, you really have to, you can do lots of things in the IP world, but not all of those things would be appropriate for somebody's business. So you have to be able to take the legal aspects of the things that you're doing and translate those into something that's appropriate for the client and their business. And as far as sort of many careers in chemistry are concerned, it is particularly well compensated, unless of course you're stupid enough to start your own business up. And so, you know, that I was put there as a caveat. But there's some salaries here for UK salaries from 2019 that give you an idea of kind of where people end up in various levels of the profession. On the downside, the training is long, particularly in the UK. You would expect to take 5 years taking your exams, and they aren't pleasant. There is a high failure rate. And if you don't like adhering to deadlines and kind of stress and putting responsibility, if you, as a patent attorney, you could legitimately be looking after a portfolio of cases that cover billions of dollars worth of assets. If you stop to think about it, which is sometimes ill-advised, it can be a huge responsibility. So, if stressful deadlines and sort of big responsibility isn't your thing, then I would steer well away from a patent attorney. Here are the methods of becoming a sort of patent attorney for the UK. You basically have to have a science degree. I think that goes without saying for everyone on the line here. You then need to find a job as a trainee. From outside a company, I went from inside a company to another job. Usually you would get one in private practice in a law firm. You then need to pass multiple exams. And most UK patent attorneys, for instance, dual qualify as both a UK and a European patent attorney. So you're looking at 2 sets of foundation exams and then 2 sets of qualification exams afterwards. You can't even sit the second set of European qualification exams until you've been practicing for 3 years. So it's always going to take you at least 4, and most people fail several along the way. There's no shame in that, and it probably will take you more like 5 years to pass and a few fails. So if you don't like taking exams, this is not the role for you either. But the exams are a mean to an end, and they do come to the end eventually. So if you can get over that hump, it's worth it. But don't go into this if you just like taking exams, because you will find the first 5 years of your career is consumed with them. And then finally, I'm assuming these slides get circulated in some form or other, but finally here's some useful resources if anyone wants to check any of these things out. I'm not sure if you can actually see this, but I would particularly draw your attention to the Careers and Ideas website, which is part of my institute's initiative. And it has a really great page there, of which I've snipped a little piece off, where they basically go through every single career that you could possibly do that was related to these kind of ideas, inventions. And they do from everything from a sort of patent office examiner to a patent attorney to a patent judge. And it is, if you're at all interested in this as an area, it's well worth having a look through there to see if maybe not the patent attorney, but maybe there are other elements of this that you would find interesting. So draw your attention to that, but there are some more resources and job sites on here as well that you can take a look at. And finally, I think we're going to come to questions at the end, but finally, this is me. If you are thinking about a career as a patent attorney and you want to drop me a note, please feel free. Always very happy to talk to anybody thinking about doing this as a profession. And if you really want to read a bit more about the patent systems, both in the UK and on the international sort of stage, but my colleague and I wrote a couple of articles for the Gazette in the UK about 18 months ago, and I've put the links on this slide as well there, so you're very welcome to click on these. They are quite long and written fairly dryly, so they may be insomnia cures as well, but if you're interested in learning a bit more, then please take a look at that. So with that, I will pass back to Fatima, and then if there's any questions, please ask at the end, and I'll be very happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lucy. That was very insightful presentation. Thank you so much. And it was great actually to hear about your journey. How does your career look like? What do you do? And also the challenges and the resources that you actually provided are very insightful. Thank you so much. And we understand that maybe this job is different from one country to another. So this is the case in UK, and I think we had a previous workshop in the IYCN as well. We hosted a patent attorney from the United States. So if you are based in the United States and want to learn more about the intellectual property, we have a workshop previously organized titled Science Management of Science and Innovation, so you can go back and check it out. Thank you again, Lucy. We will be happy to talk to you again in the Q&A session.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So now we move on to our next speaker, Dr. Marisa Quintero. So Dr. Marisa, she actually a biochemist, a virologist, and entrepreneur, and a medical writer. She has many hats on her head. Dr. Marisa Quintero is a freelance medical writer specializing in viral medical devices and immunoassay development. She is also a mother of 2 U.S. Air Force veteran and military spouse. She completed her PhD during the pandemic in molecular biophysics and biochemistry in 2020. She applied her experience in chemistry and virology assay development to help small businesses validate their COVID-19 related technologies, as well as apply for FDA market authorization, approval, or clearance. Her chemistry experience includes synthesizing small molecules and examining their structure and biological functions using spectroscopy, mass spectroscopy, spectrometry, and cellular assays. Her virology experience includes identifying 2 cellular factors required for Ebola virus infection of human cells by using high throughput RNA and drug screening, as well as high-resolution microscopy. Joining me, please, to welcome Dr. Marisa Quantero.
Good morning. It's great to be here. Thank you so much, Fatima, for inviting me. Let me see if my slides will. Okay, good. Can you see those?
Yes, we can. Thank you, Maritza.
Excellent. So, just to give you a little bit of background, I think I lost my slides again. Okay, give you a little bit of background about myself. Not to give you too much detail, but to hopefully, be able to portray where I'm coming from and why I chose to be a medical writer. And if that's a career path you're interested in doing, maybe give you a little bit of resources so that you can make that leap. So it was definitely something scary to jump into, but I'm really glad that I did, and I really love it. Right now, it's something that I do part-time, but I'm hoping that within a few years, it's something that I can pursue full-time. I'm a freelance medical writer, which means, I do this independently, but of course, there are many agency medical writing jobs available that, I highly recommend if it's something you're interested in doing, that you read up on and apply. I know of quite a few internships. I know that especially now that remote work has become, more acceptable, medical writing is definitely a wonderful remote career, if that's something you're interested in doing.
Marisa, would you enable your camera?
I think it's enabled. Can you see me now?
I can see you, yes.
Okay, great. So my contact information here is below. You can reach me by email or on my website. So that's maritza.quintero@vdscientific.com. And I'm happy to, give you some more information or point you in the right direction. So a little bit about my career journey. I really loved being a research scientist. So I spent a lot of time in the lab. I double majored as an undergrad. I went to school in San Antonio. That's where I'm located now. So San Antonio, Texas in the US. I majored in chemistry and biology. I decided to pursue a PhD at the University of Utah in medicinal chemistry, but I actually didn't finish that program. I'm in a military family. My husband is in the Air Force, so we relocated during that time. So I earned a Master of Philosophy in medicinal chemistry, and then later I went back to school to finish my PhD, and I did finish that just before the pandemic started. Degrees in molecular biophysics and biochemistry. So I think, as you can tell by all those names, I've always had one foot in the chemistry world and then another in the bio world. I think that, I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir, but there's so much potential in research and innovation in general, right at that interface. I have 14 years of lab experience. So, my very first science job was as a lab tech in an organic chemistry lab. I did plenty of research, like many of you, as a graduate student. And since then, I've also worked as a senior scientist in a small biotech startup. So it was a nanoparticle company. I'm currently an analytical scientist, so mass spectrometry has sort of been at the core of a lot of what I've done in the past, so that's what I do now. And then I've been a freelance medical writer since 2019, officially since 2019, but medical writing is something, I'll tell you a little bit more about, but it's something that I've always had a knack for and, helped colleagues out. So if that's not a situation you're in, I highly recommend that you look into this career field. Just to give you a brief glimpse, I know this is a very loaded slide, a brief glimpse of my background. I don't have an English degree. I never considered getting an English degree. I've never been, a stickler for grammar or things like that, but my background is in chemistry. So, again, I'm trained as an organic chemist. My background was, predominantly, if you had to pile everything together, was assay development. So, I developed assays for, to look at the biological function of a lot of the molecules that I synthesized as an organic chemist. I also worked on viruses. So, nanoparticles is a topic that I, thought a lot about for many years as a researcher. And that includes viruses, right? So liposomes, quantum dots, gold nanoparticles, and viruses, which are also in the nanometer, or in the case of Ebola, which is one of the viruses that I worked on, is on the micrometer scale. So these are topics that, really are ingrained in how I think about, science. So as you know, when SARS-CoV-2 began, I think all of those skill sets were really an advantage to me to be able to launch my medical writing career. So I did medical writing. I have done it as a freelancer. I did it exclusively for 1 year. And then, after that, I have done it as a side job or a part-time job. And, what exactly do medical writers do? So there's so much diversity out there. I just want to give you a little glimpse of what I've done, based on my scientific experience. So in very general terms, medical writers are science communicators. So they need to be able to combine their technical expertise as a scientist with their communication skills. And that's just, of course, in writing, but also with people. So you need to be able to interpret, when someone tells you, oh, I want to, be able to communicate something, this, to an audience, you need to understand, the purpose. Why do they want to communicate that? Who do they want to communicate it to? And then be able to mesh all of that together. So you're, you have to be able to understand, to be a good listener, and then also be a good writer. And in general, for some of the projects that I've done, some people have been doing this for decades. So of course, my experience is only about 3 years, so it's not as expansive, but I think I've gotten a fairly good taste of the different kind, a little bit of the different kinds of writing that are out there. You, of course, can, look more into this specific types of writing. But in general, some of the projects that I've worked on, again, are meant to facilitate information transfer. And, this is usually between a technical team, so, a team of R&D scientists. Oftentimes, they want to be able to communicate, some very technical, very precise information to investors who may not have a scientific background, or to patients, or to regulatory agencies, which of course are, very interested in the details. You need to know who you're writing for and be able to adjust the content so that the audience gets the information needed, so that the reason or the purpose of that communication is met. So some of the things, that you may already be familiar with are, making conference posters or abstracts. Some other things are, for example, training, either, for continuing CME or, continuing medical education. So for like healthcare professionals, or sometimes, a technical team wants to be able to train their sales representatives so that they know, what to say, how to say it to clients or customers. Some other things that, are also a good way to get your foot in the door. So this is how I started. I offered my fact checking services essentially to some medical writers that are already well established in the field. So I wanted to gain experience. So I reached out to them and I told them, hey, I have this background and I would love to learn more about medical writing. And I helped them fact check. I helped them check references, check for spelling and fluency, proofreading, etc. And it was a great way for me to meet other medical writers, but also to get a feel for the types of documents, the layouts, things like that that are important when you do this. You are, specializing despite your technical background in medical communication. So, you have to wear the hat of a communicator. You're no longer, the expert on a technical team. You are the communication specialist. So you need to know how to, put that hat on and be able to provide that service to, whoever your customer is. Some of the things that I've enjoyed writing most are some of the more technical documents. So standard operating procedures, something that I'm working on, of course, it's important to keep learning and keep refining your skill set, is regulatory documentation. I know that our previous speaker, gave some wonderful information about that type of work. But medical writers can facilitate or can help some of these, legal efforts by providing some of that technical background, writing reports or summaries to facilitate submission to regulatory agencies, for example. And then also, some of the things that are more traditional, like writing manuscripts or helping write grant proposals and literature reviews. I did quite a few feasibility reports, during SARS-CoV-2, just because of my background in, ELISAs, assay development, things like that, put me in a good position to be able to help companies, figure out what the competition was doing, what the regulatory agencies wanted, and then understand how to organize their research to help launch their technology and get market approval. So what should you do if you're interested in becoming a medical writer? It is really something that you have to think about. Personally, I loved being able to work from home. I have 2 kids, so being able to adjust my schedule, manage my energy instead of managing my calendar around my kids, is really a phenomenal opportunity. So if that's something that's very important to you, then I would highly recommend you look at, medical writing and other remote opportunities. As a lab scientist, working from home is really not something feasible oftentimes. And I think the biggest advice I can give you, if this is something you're interested in doing, is specialize. So we cannot ever, there just isn't enough time to become an expert at everything. So, think about what you enjoy doing and then what sets you apart. So if you're in a room full of PhDs or in a room full of scientists, what can you contribute to that conversation? Perhaps that's the topic that you would be best suited for, becoming a medical writing specialist or consulting for. Think about who, based on that skill set, who could be a potential customer, who can you help? There's always, someone that you can help. Well, and that's something you need to think about. That's probably the type of client you would want to have. And then start compiling a portfolio. So, I can tell you, oh, I'm a great writer. I'm incredibly fluent in English and Spanish, but, those are just words. You need to be able to demonstrate that. So I highly recommend that you start compiling a portfolio. If you've authored any papers or book chapters or posters for conferences, just put those together in a folder, and that way when you're interested, if you're going to, for example, apply to a medical writing agency, you want to have those examples so that you can show them how good you are instead of just telling them that you can perform. Show them what you can do. And then I think I cut off part of my sentence. Think about whether you want to be a freelancer or work for an agency. So I love being a freelancer because that really opens up my ability to do other things. For example, I have a different full-time job. But for some people, they can't do that. So when you're a freelancer, as you probably know, you are responsible for your own, bringing in your own clients, your own projects. So half of your time, or perhaps, about half of your time is spent marketing, right? So meeting people, telling them what you can do, etc. And there is this sort of feast or famine type of work schedule. Sometimes you have a lot of work, sometimes you don't have a lot of work. So you need to be able to, manage your finances accordingly. And then the biggest advice I can give you is just keep learning. So science, of course, continuously is moving at, this breakneck speed. And as a science communicator, you need to be able to keep track of how fast, or stay in line and understand how your specific field is moving, but also, understand changes in medical writing. So two great resources I highly recommend you look at are the American Medical Writers Association, or AMWA. I believe Europe also has theirs. I think it's called EMWA if you're in Europe. And then, I mentioned something I'm pursuing now is training and being able to specialize in regulatory writing. So the Regulatory Affairs Professional Society, or RAPS, here in the US, has some great resources, and both of these sites have some excellent educational material to really refine your skill set and just to teach you more about the career fields. So thank you so much. I'm looking forward to the Q&A and being able to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you so much, Maritza, for this wonderful presentation. It's very insightful. We got many questions for you from our audience. We will be happy definitely to continue the conversation with you afterwards. Thank you. So now we move to our third speaker, Cristian Martin. Cristian is a PhD candidate in chemistry at the University of Connecticut. He's originally from Puerto Rico. He earned his bachelor's degree in chemistry from Pontifical Catholic University of Puerto Rico. His research focuses on directly controlled catalysts that allow for on-demand control of product selectivity and sustainable chemistry practices. In the past, he has worked with semiconductor, nanoparticles, and quantum dots. He is actively involved in the scientific community by the American Chemical Society Connecticut Valley section as a founding member and the current chair of the Younger Chemist Committee local section, where his work focuses on easing and the transition from student into early career chemist. He is also a member of the University of Connecticut Chemistry Department Joint Safety Team, where he works on implementing industry standard safety practices and improving overall safety culture in the department. So Cristian, the floor now is yours. We are happy to hear from your experience while you are being a graduate student. So I'll allow you to share your slides right now.
Perfect. Okay. Let's set up here. Okay. That's probably not what I want. Let's see. Yep. Okay. So slides are being shown right now, correct?
Correct.
Perfect. Setting just my windows up so that everything is perfect. Okay. So, thank you, Mustafa, for that wonderful introduction. Like she said, my name is Cristian Aviles-Martin. I'm going to be talking about what it's been like to work as a technical consultant during graduate school, and then I'll show you some notable clients I've had over the last few years, and I'm then giving all of you some good pointers on how you can get involved. As the title says, it's not just for grad students, postdocs, are even more qualified, in my opinion, to get involved in this. Yeah, let's start. So a little bit about me. I was born and raised in Puerto Rico. I got my bachelor's in chemistry down there, specializing in analytical chemistry and overall just the development of analytical methods. And then I moved over to the University of Connecticut to work on my PhD in chemistry. I'm an expert in photochemistry, do a lot of organic synthesis. Specifically, I've been very involved in researching and implementing better laboratory safety in my department and overall just around the country in terms of collaboration with different joint safety teams. And on occasion, I sometimes get people or companies to pay me to solve their science problems, right? And you're wondering, that sounds cool. How would I do that? So here it is. One, what is consulting? It's essentially just, in the most easy way you can say it, it's being professional problem solvers. You've been handing a problem. Someone has a problem in their company, their science, their projects, whatever, and then you come up with a solution for them, and then you get paid. It's honestly, it's basically as simple as that, but in general, that's the main idea. So what happens is these people, sometimes the people I've been working for are usually small startups, 5 to 10 person teams, don't really have the know-how of a problem that has just come up with their new technology. They put an ad out and I've responded, and I'm a person that has the knowledge that they need and I help them. So in turn, their necessity can become my gain, and it could become your gain too if you get involved in this type of work. Now, it's important to distinct here that I'm not going to be talking about full-time consulting as part of a firm. That is one option you can do, and actually a lot of consulting firms hire students right out of graduate school to become technical consultants, but that's not what we're going to do. We're going to be focusing on the part-time work, the stuff that you could probably do in your spare time, whatever little that may be as a graduate student or postdoc, and actually then get involved. So yeah. In the last few years, two of my notable and actually largest clients I've had have been Devogy Molecular and Clean Chrome Technologies. I actually worked for Devogy for a full around 4 to 5 months. I was their hygiene officer for a very little amount of time and helped them with some product development on surface chemistry projects. And then I was originally just hired to get them set up in their laboratory logistics because I have experience in regulations and environmental health and safety. So they basically hired me to come in. It was like, hey, we're setting up a new lab in this state. Can you help us organize and get set up so that we're compliant in all the ways that we need to be? And then the other notable client I worked for them for about 3 months, was Clean Crop Technologies. As an analytical methods developer, specifically in spectroscopy and characterization of reactive gases in their plasmas technology. And I'm being very quick because I am still under NDA with these companies, so I can't really tell you specifics, but it's in general, they had a problem, I knew how to solve it for them, and I worked for them for a little bit. So that's cool, and I'm like, you're sitting there, well, I'm a biochemist, I don't know how to do analytical methods, or I'm a life sciences researcher, or I am an applied math researcher that I works with chemistry sometimes, that types of things like that. So, well, there's actually many ways you can get involved in these type of consulting work. It's not just for chemists. So you're thinking, what can you do as a grad student? How can what would someone hire me more? Well, these are real life examples of people I have met online as I work and get my name up there. I know an applied maths grad student who was hired by an electrical company to develop algorithms on how the actual power regulators should distribute energy around the city to make it more efficient. I've heard of a postdoc that works with venture capital firms to actually go through and validate the methods that startup companies are proposing to the banks and all the people that are giving them money and say, is this real? Is this possible? So that's quite a big decision, their work could actually determine the whole success of a startup company. So, that's another thing. And then one of my favorite ones is being a scientific advisor for cinema and television. As ridiculous as some plot lines in television shows might be, most of the times they have some sort of scientific advisor. In fact, this picture here is ex-American Chemical Society president, Donna Nelson, and she was the scientific advisor on Breaking Bad for the whole of the run of the show. So all of the synthetic chemistry and all the stuff that they showed in the actual, show was vetted by her, and it is technically possible, but they deliberately went to the most low yield syntheses as possible because they knew that a lot of people might be seeing this and they didn't want to, teach people how to make illicit substances. So there's a lot of different things. I've seen it for podcasts. I've seen them for just random blog posts. People, hey, I have a question to ask and I can't find it online. Can someone help me? And, and just hop on a call and help them figure it out. So yeah, lots of different things you can do. Now you're thinking, sounds great, but why should I do this, right? I'm a grad student / postdoc or whatever. I'm here for however many years. I work so many hours in lab. I don't have time to do this. Like, I don't have the spare time. I just want to do my research, graduate, and get out. Well, I'm going to give you 4 really simple reasons to do it. 1, it's work experience. I don't know about you. I am a aging out grad student. I'm about to defend this year, or planning to at least. And I've been applying to jobs and interviewing, and the surprising amount of jobs that are entry level and require like 3 to 5 years of work experience is crazy, right? Like you can't, like, it is a lot. It's partly on the hiring managers, all the people, they don't understand what is coming out there right now. But hey, if you graduate and you say, oh, I've already worked for like 5 different startups and different types of projects, that's work experience that can go on your CV or your resume. So yeah, it's really good idea. Plus, it also helps out with your network. If you work for one of these companies or one of your clients, and then you graduate and they're like, hey, I'm actually looking for something full time now. If you'd like to consider me, go ahead. They already have worked with you. You have a rapport that you've built that can actually help you get a job. Second, as scientists, we're always solving problems. We're always solving questions and answering questions that no one knows. Solving really complex problems on very tight timescales, as much as the projects usually are, helps you, improve and do problem solving and go ahead. Also, it's no way to avoid it. It's in your future. It doesn't matter if you're going to go into faculty, if you're going to go into patent law, or if you're going to be like a scientist at a company. You're still going to have some type of consulting work. You might consult in different departments if you're in a company, things like that. So yeah, you will be always doing similar type of work. Why not practice now while you're a grad student? And in the end, we all know grad student stipends don't really have us floating in money. So having a little bit of extra funds running around as a grad student really doesn't hurt. So next thing is, you're stuck in lab all day. How do I actually go get work? Well, 2, use your current network. Go to your advisors, go to your departments. Your universities usually have programs called industry affiliate programs, where they have just, hey, we have experts, companies, come ask us, and then we'll connect you with experts. Your university, some universities have that. You should ask. Other things you have is job databases like Upwork or Collabtree. Fair warning, these usually charge some sort of commission on the job. You're not paying it up front, but they usually take up to 20% or more in some companies that I've seen of your pay from this job as like a fee for using their service. So that's something to keep in mind. But it's very useful. I've had very good success with these 2 services here. I use LinkedIn for various small contracts. You just search part-time, search consulting or scientific consulting, and hit the filter for part-time, and it goes in well, and you have some opportunities depending on where you are. And finally, not something that I want to focus on a lot about, but there's professional consulting firms. Some of them allow you to do part-time work. BCG, Boston Consulting Group, is actually a full-time company. It's just the first one I thought of. But there is copy editing or freelance writing, like our friend here just talked about, So yeah, there's all different places. Look online, search around. Anywhere you might see a job, you probably might be able to get this type of work. Then, here's some tips I want to give everyone. If you do think of that, you know, hey, I like it, I know where to find it, I'm gonna go do it. Be careful. For every 5 jobs that are actually legitimate and like worth your time, there's gonna be 10 to 15 that it's like just a complete waste of time. And there's a bunch of scams. I literally have gone through so many writing jobs where it's a parent trying to pay someone to do their kids' homework. You got to be really careful when you're doing those descriptions. Don't agree to anything until you've actually got a very specific idea of what the work is. And just avoid getting scammed. You know, like don't work for free. If you don't have an agreement that's set in and you don't have evidence of funds, don't start any work until there's actual paperwork done. After that, how do you get paid? Usually, consultants get paid either on fixed rates or hourly rates. There's pros and cons to each. Don't really want to like go deep into them. We can go into the questions later. Hourly, it's great, and the more fixed rates is easy because you know how much you're making and what you think, but then you can risk, you know, not charging enough. Hourly is great because it charges you for the amount of work you're putting in, but it doesn't really make it so that this project gets done faster, right? Because if you get done faster, then you get paid less. I like sometimes to use a hybrid of the two, where I do a fixed rate, and then if the scope of work of what the agreement was exceeds what we originally exceed, then it's an hourly per hour, right? So sometimes using the best of both worlds works. Next, the other thing, you need a contract, and it has to be your contract, not a piece of paper, not an agreement that your client is giving you. Reason why? Yes, you may sign an NDA, for example, from your client. You may sign a contract that says this is how you'll be an independent contractor with us, stuff like that. That's fine. But you need to have them sign a paper that has them agree to your terms. If you're only signing documents that your clients are handing out, you're agreeing to their terms only, and then you have no negotiation power. So before anything is done, go online, Google consulting services agreement template, and then customize it to you. That's what I did. It's what I use. There's online attorneys that you can like pay for a little bit of hours to have them go through it if you want and like do it. And if you're doing a lot of work, I suggested, you know, getting some type of legal advice. But to start out, just get a contact that abides to all the laws in your state, country, union, whatever it is, and fill it out and have your client sign that. You know, you have some so that you're able to have some protection. Then, as Benjamin Franklin said, the only thing certain in life is death and taxes. Any consulting work that you do is going to be subject to self-employment tax in the U.S. at least. I don't know about other countries. I didn't really look into that. I apologize for that. I'm not a tax advisor. Go talk with a tax advisor if you're doing that type of work. In the US, sometimes you'll get forms of 1099s, which it explains how much this company pay you, but sometimes they try to not give them to you. If you don't get them, still report that income or whatever form of evidence you get in your state or jurisdiction, because if that company gets audited and they get in trouble, and then they see, oh, they paid out money to you, whatever, then you get in trouble because then you have to go back pay, and evading taxes is never a good thing. So don't do that. Finally, for my international student friends, there are visa considerations, right? In the US, if you're on an F1 student visa, there are very strict restrictions on income and work and environments that you can be involved with. If it's your first year in the US, you are not allowed to do freelance work at all. Like it is against the agreements of your visa. Don't try it. After your first year, there's different types of processes. There's this thing called optical practical training time, which is a maximum of 12 months, but it's time that also applies after your visa. So if you're doing freelance work, that means that the time after your visa to get a job shortens. It's a very complex thing, but I want to make sure that if you're a student on, if you're on a student visa in the US, be careful on that type of freelance work you get involved with, and go talk with your institution's advisor on international affairs. I'm not an immigration lawyer, so that's the quick disclaimer here. To see how you, if you're really interested in some type of work like this, go to the person that handles immigration issues at your institution and try to get their opinion. Finally, I know we're going to have questions in the panel at the end, but this is my contact info. Twitter, reach out. LinkedIn, reach out. I love connecting with people. I love helping them to answer any career questions. I love talking about laboratory safety. That's the type of thing. So yeah, reach out. There's a contact form on my personal website if you want to send like a private email. So yeah, I thank everyone for this time, and hope to answer everyone's questions during the panel. Okay. How do I stop? Oh, I meant to stop. Yeah. How do I stop sharing? Oh, here it is. Okay.
Okay, I think we can all turn on our cameras now for the Q&A session. Discussion. Thank you so much for the interesting talk, Cristian. It was very cool to see what it's like doing consulting work, especially as a student, which is very commendable. It's like juggling all the things as well. We have quite a lot of questions for everyone. So I'd like to ask a general question to everyone. So how is chemistry still related within the jobs that you do daily? I know you touched upon some of it, but could you give more details maybe? Anyone can go. Maybe Lucy?
Sure. Mine is quite easy, I think, because we use ours in drafting patent applications, making technical arguments, quite a lot. For the first part of my career, I studiously avoided anything with the word bio preceding it, but these days I've sort of inched into peptides and vaccines, who hasn't, and bits of mRNA and that sort of thing, but really, really quite science focused in all across the board, really. So mine's quite easy answer to that, I think.
Thank you. And Maritza?
Yeah, similarly, chemistry is, really everywhere. Especially, as a medical writer, we have to be very conscientious of like IUPAC nomenclature. But in general, chemistry is very quantitative. So a lot of what you learn, in analytical chemistry and Gen Chem about the quantitative aspects is something that's, even though we're writers, that's still inherent, in between the lines of everything we write.
Thank you. Thank you. And Cristian?
Well, yeah, the type of work I do, I basically advertise myself as a chemist for hire. In any way, most of the work I do is, most of the common small-time projects I've taken on are some type of report writing or validation. So it's a lot of like research and reading and writing up summaries on a specific topic. But the bigger stuff I did, I've literally just been in a company's lab, like, we can't do this, please do it for us type of thing. So yeah, I literally just do what I would do in my lab in grad school, and I just go outside of my university and get paid for it.
Cool. So that also leads me to the question of what kind of skills or training would you all recommend for your fields that you're in? I know you touched upon it, Lucy, so I don't think you need to necessarily repeat it again. But for Cristian and Maritza, I'm sure that would be quite interesting, especially since you both sound like you're doing freelance type of work. What kind of skills and training would you recommend?
If real quick, I would say just look more of like developing that corporate speak. In academia, it's very much straight to the point of what the point is, of what the research is saying. Sometimes you need to understand what is the actual needs of a client, and you need to be able to work and develop more feedback-based decision making. That's usually, and in science and academia, you're just told, oh, go explore everything, go explore science, go see your topic, what is the best you can do, versus at a company or when you have a client that like needs something for next week, it's what is the most probable and time-effective solution that you can provide us. So you need to very, very aware of your client's needs.
Thank you. And Maritza?
I agree with that. You know, he said it quite well. So I think, you know, as a medical writer, you know, that is a field in and of itself. So even though we're scientists, that doesn't qualify you to be a science communicator. You need to stay educated, stay, you know, on top of changes in the medical writing field. You need to know your, you know, your customer, know your audience, and the purpose of your project, and be able to, you know, adapt and be flexible for those.
Thank you so much. In terms of the skills, Lucy, did you actually have to do a law degree as well to do practice patenting?
No, so that's more of a US. So in the US, patent attorneys will have a law degree first after their science degrees, and then they will go and do the patent bar on top of that. So in the UK, the system is very different. That would be applicable across Europe, I believe, so that everybody is who are patent attorneys don't typically have law degrees. So the science comes first. You have to have a science degree, and then you learn all the area of laws that you need to do sort of during your qualification on your exams. And if you think about that, it kind of makes sense really, because you don't need to do sort of odd areas of the law that deals with, you know, selling commercial property, sort of, you know, houses and that sort of thing. Really, you don't necessarily need to know that. You need to be experts in one very niche part of the legal sort of world, really. So, yeah, no law degrees in Europe.
Thank you, thank you. Sorry, just ignore the fact that it's gone dark. I'm in South Africa and we're load shedding. So if I suddenly disappear, Fatima will come back. Okay. So in terms of that as well, Maritza, there was a good question about how do you balance study, work, and family? And this probably applies to all of you, actually.
Yeah, so, you know, I'm not a student anymore, so I know that if you're a student, you know, obviously that takes up an overwhelming amount of time. So I work full time, but the job that I have is very well structured. So I'm a contractor for a government lab. So I have a very fixed schedule, and I don't bring any work home, which means that when I'm home, you know, that time is available for me to do with whatever, you know, whatever I want. And, you know, I've always been an avid reader. I love writing. It's something that I've always done, even before I decided to pursue medical writing. You know, I've always had colleagues and friends, you know, phone me and ask me, hey, can you help me write this grant? Can you help me check this? So it's sort of been an extension of what I was already doing. You know, now I just get paid for it, which is, of course, wonderful. And, you know, I mentioned as a freelancer, sometimes you have a lot of work, sometimes you don't have work. You know, I can go a week or two without any projects. So during that time, you know, you have to stay disciplined, obviously. Medical writing is not an easy job, not at all. It takes up a lot of time. And, you know, as a freelancer, you are an entrepreneur, right? You have to be responsible for yourself, stay alert, stay, you know, on top of things. So I love to learn, so I'm always learning something new. But it does take up a lot of time, and you know, it isn't something easy. Medical writing isn't a, you know, you can't really relax. You're actually, your mind is constantly engaged, and it's a lot of hard work.
Thank you so much. So on the topic of like getting your jobs and everything, for all of you, what are the best ways that you use to market your skills or what you can do for companies? Any ideas? Let's start with you, Cristian.
It's mostly highlighting the things I've done, right? It's like Maritza says, you know, building a portfolio is useful. I don't have an actual public portfolio because unfortunately a lot of the work I've done ends up being hidden behind NDA or non-disclosure agreement. But I am allowed to, you know, when I'm in with a company. So this is the type of work and solutions I've made, and saying them specifically. But but it's also just publicly facing profiles. Like I do a lot of nonprofit work and volunteer work. And when it's things like handling grant proposals, it's like, look, I'm chair of my Younger Chemists Committee. I write grant proposals like quarterly to get funds for actual like events. I know how to balance budgets in terms of things like that. When it's analytical method development, I'll show them my thesis work. I'll show them papers I have been I've worked on, or things like that. It's about taking the products of your efforts and making them very publicly and easily accessible, so that people can see these are my skills, these are the things you can do. And then when in doubt, go get free certifications and things. LinkedIn has just launched a new tool. It's called like skill assessments. And it just tests on different types of things. Like they have a bunch of one for Microsoft Word, things for data analysis, stuff like that. They're free. They're just quizzes that you take, and it shows, hey, I know how to use this software, or I know how to use this tool. Just make sure people can see the types of things you can do, so when they're searching for you, you come up.
Thank you. And Lucy?
Yeah, maybe a couple of pieces of advice for me. So I'm going to answer the question with respect to trying to get your first job as a trainee patent attorney, rather than us trying to get business, which I think would be less relevant. So I firstly, I would say be brave, which is incredibly easy coming from me, because I'm probably the least likely person, certainly at the age of sort of 22, to actually be brave. But there are nice people out there, and lots of people in my profession feel quite strongly that we really do need to encourage the younger guys into the profession. We need to help them. We need to really sort of we really need to guide them and give them advice and that sort of thing. So if I was starting out right now, it is quite a tough world out there, especially to get your first spot. So I would really reach out to individuals. People have read that Retro Chemistry World article that I alluded to before. People have dropped me emails out of the blue, and I've responded, and we've talked and offered guidance, and sometimes that's turned into a little bit more of a dialogue and stuff. So be that person. I think that would be the first thing I would say, is be the person who reaches out to people. You want to target a particular law firm, find the hiring manager, find a partner who's interested, get to know somebody, and maybe they can act as an internal advocate for you if you impress them. And maybe the other piece of advice I would say is be interesting. And I know as a hiring manager, hiring external people from outside, is that when you're faced with a load of CVs, it can be really difficult to figure out kind of what the person really is underneath all of that. And yes, you need them to be all of the things you need them to be. They have to have their chemistry degree, they have to have all the skill set that you need them to do. But is there something else that you can sort of be that makes you slightly more interesting, slightly something that you would allow the person who's reading your CV or covering letter to say, I think that person's got some people skills, that person could deal with my client, that person, there's something more about them than just a guy that sits in the back room turning out patent applications. So they would be my top two, I think.
Thank you so much. That's really good advice. And you, Maritza?
So similarly, I really like Lucy's comment about being brave. So when I decided to do this, as a freelancer, I was basically starting during the beginning of a pandemic. So it was really hard to just go out and meet people, because we were all quarantined. So I really I tried quite a few things. Many of them did not work, but what I found to be the most effective is, during this time, there was quite a lot of chaos as far as diagnostics. So COVID, SARS-CoV-2 was all over the media, but one, people didn't really know what it was. Two, there really were no good tests. So what I decided to do was, try to show my value. So I made an email, so a weekly email every Monday. And I would sort of, go out there into the media, FDA, World Health Organization, see what was important, and just write in one email tidbits, hey, this happened, blah, blah, blah. And then I would email that to, people that I knew were related, or working on topics like that, or might know someone who was working on a topic that might need a medical writer. I sent it to a bunch of biotech startups that I knew could be developing COVID technologies. So I did this, and honestly, within like 2 or 3 weeks of doing this, so I provided this service for free, right? I was not paid for that, but that led to quite a lot of work. So they already knew my name, they knew that I could provide value, so they'd reach out to me and say, hey, can you figure this out? And then I would start charging either fixed rates or hourly rates depending on what it was. But being able to show what I could do was the most effective way of getting clients.
Thank you so much. That's really good advice as well. Thank you. I do have some more specific questions from people to each person. So let me start with Lucy. What are the challenges encountered in the job of a patent attorney?
There are lots and lots of challenges, deadlines all the time. I mean, it is probably one of the worst jobs in the world for deadlines, I think. So every patent office communication has a deadline that it has to be responded by. There are renewal fees with deadlines, all sorts of things. So that's one thing. Some of the more interesting challenges, every challenge is either good or bad. In my new life as an external patent attorney, I'm no longer doing one branch of pharmaceutical patents now. I'm diversifying a little bit. So probably there are sort of daily challenges getting up to speed with a new client's technology and trying to make sure that you do the absolute best for them. And like Maritza was just saying, there's a lots of work that you do on your own dime, basically trying to make sure that you really know what you're talking about and you can address all of that. So there are certainly scientific challenges in there as well. So I would say probably those are the top two, deadlines and new science.
Thank you. And when writing patents, how much time do you spend working alone versus working in a team?
Almost. It depends. That again depends. An awful lot alone, I would have thought these days. So, kind of if you're working in house, you're working in house as part of a team. So there are. I didn't get into this, and I don't want to chew up all your question time just talking about me. But there are two really different roles. One is an in-house patent attorney, where you're part of the business and offering advice within that business arena, and then the external patent attorney who's like kind of selling services to somebody who doesn't, for whatever reason, have their own kind of sort of people. So I'm sorry, I've just remind me what the question was again. I've just blanked.
How much time do you spend working alone?
Yeah, so the in-house attorney will be much more as part of a team, working within the scientific discipline. So you might work as a team as part. There'd be the pharmaceutical development guys, the medics, all sorts of things. You'd be working within the team. But in the private practice arena, basically you're working much more individually, almost the whole sort of time, with touch points with the clients. But so, you could be looking at sort of 90% maybe working by yourself and 10% as part of the team these days.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. On to Maritza. The questions I have for a medical writer. Is it necessary? Is it not necessary to do medical writing? Could you also write other science topics?
So yes, definitely. I completely skipped over science writers. So science writing is it sounds the same, but it's actually different. So science writing is more journalistic. It's more targeting. These are very general statements. Targeting non-scientific audiences. And a lot of times, science writers, they do amazing work, but they don't necessarily have a science background. They have a science interest. There's some great information. There's a really good book. I don't have the title now, but if it's possible, I'll share that with you, and then maybe you can share it with the group. That really helps differentiate science writing versus medical writing. Medical writing is usually PhDs, PharmDs, MDs, that are doing a lot of this work, or someone with a graduate degree, because it's much more specialized. Science writing is more, what you would see in a magazine or on your news. So they're both, very excellent careers, but they're not the same thing.
Okay, thank you. Another question is, if a person is an aspiring writer, what advice would you give them on like where to start and when and how?
Yeah, so definitely write all the time. You never know, you want to it's like when if you're going to run a marathon, you have to run every day, right? So even if you're not getting paid for it, write. Cristian mentioned volunteering. So I definitely write for some nonprofits as give my time for free. I would highly, highly recommend looking into these professional societies. AMWA, which I included the link for, so American Medical Writers Association, is a great place. I know Lucy mentioned, these types of jobs, you spend a lot of time working on your own, right? So similarly, as a medical writer, you spend most of your time alone. So being able to join a community like AMWA was one of the best things that I did. I was very hesitant, right? Because as a freelancer, you're trying to earn money. Why do I want to go spend money on a membership? But I highly recommend it. You meet some great people. We meet, the chapter meets about once a month. You get to know other people, other medical writers who specialize in cancer, for example, will send me clients who need help with, virology or infectious disease. So that's one pro. But that's the best place to start, is you get to meet other people, you get to know what type of work they do, and you really, just because you work alone doesn't mean you don't need to build a network. And as a freelancer, you don't work for a company, so you have to build your own network. And that's, I think AMWA is a great place to start.
Thank you. One more question is, how long does a writing project usually take?
Yeah, that was one of the questions I thought about a lot. I can't give you an answer. It really depends. It absolutely is. It's something that I've struggled with even now. I accept different kinds of writing projects, and I never know how long it's going to take me. So that it's really hard to, come up with a fixed price, because I can say, oh, it's going to take me 1 week. And in reality, 3 weeks later, I'm still, struggling to find the resources needed to do it. So it really depends, and that's something you have to be aware of when you charge, when you bid, because you don't know how long it's going to take you. And if I bid 10 hours and it takes me 20 hours, then too bad for me. I'm as a consultant, I have to deal with that. I can't charge my client. I can't tell my client, oh, it took me twice as long, I'm going to charge you twice as much. It's not how it works. So it's something you have to learn as you go. And you get better at it the more you do.
Thank you so much. Very enlightening. Thank you. Cristian, okay. So one of the questions I have is, how do you convince people to hire you when you are still seen as a student, for example?
One of the things I like to do is yes, I am a student. I don't refer to myself as a student. I have a degree in chemistry. I have a bachelor's degree in chemistry, right? So like when I talk to people, I am a chemist. I am a chemist that's getting a higher degree, but I'm still a chemist. So like there's a certain amount of you have to have a little bit of confidence in yourself to convince people. But also in general, it's just mostly through results-oriented bidding, right? Most of the times when I'm talking, I don't focus on I don't have a doctorate yet. I focus on I am understanding your problem and I know how I can fix it. And when you give clients really good potential solutions, they're like, we don't care. If you can solve this for us, we don't care what degree you have, having degrees, as a consultant, I will agree. Yes, having a higher degree gives you a little bit more of credentials. And most consultants actually end up being career scientists that are now doing this on the side. But as a graduate student, I'm not going for the multi-million-dollar consulting gigs, right? I'm going for a local company that's trying to do something.
Okay.
Or very small writing projects on multimedia type of work, So it's types of thing where the stakes are there's pressure to get things done, but the stakes aren't really oh, do this or our multi-million-dollar company is going down the drain, So it's also being sure of your skills, right, and your qualifications and what you can actually do. Don't go to a client and oversell yourself, because that's going to bite you back really fast, right? Don't go telling them you can do all this work when you've never done any of the science that's actually involved in the project, right?
That makes sense. Talking about that topic, what happens if they want consultation on a field that you know of, but you're not necessarily a specialist of, would you still take the job, or would you then try and consult with other people as well and collaborate?
If I am reached out by a client in something that I honestly don't know, I try to refer them to someone I know that will. And usually what ends up happening is then, hey, I start out with saying, I appreciate the opportunity. I couldn't help you with this. I'm more specialized towards, and then I tell them my qualifications, but I know who can help you. And then that email gets filed away in their archives, and they're like, hey, we know someone who couldn't help us out by finding someone else, but oh, they know this now. So in the future is a thing. So it's more of like, I really am very careful of not taking things that I'm like not sure I can realistically solve. If there are things that are potentially where I have experience in, but I'm not an expert, if before bidding, I can go to someone that is an expert and I can get a actually useful understanding of the problem, then I might bid, with the caveat that I'm saying, I have an understanding of this, but I have an expert that is actually working with me on this. And I am very clear to disclose that upfront in every single thing in every single discussion and written agreement that we have.
Thank you. That's very wise. So I was curious as well, what support structures do you have in place for following a sort of non-traditional career in chemistry, if that makes sense, especially for freelancing, per se? Yeah.
So as it is right now, this is to me a part-time job, and it always has been. In terms of logistical work, I went through about a year and a half ago when I started doing a little bit more projects and took a course on like starting your own consultancy agency. And it was a course that's aimed to like actually establish a business. But I just took all the techniques used and I haven't actually established a business, because establishing an LLC, while it's useful, it's used for protecting liabilities. The type of work I'm doing wouldn't really throw me into having that problem. In terms of like overall support structure, since this is a part-time job, I do have a day job as a grad student. I do have funding through there that I'm graduating. Now that I'm graduating, I'm not going to go full-time into consulting unless like it actually becomes very, very profitable very fast for me. So like I'm currently in the job market for a day job, and then still will do this on the side.
Okay, smart, diverse incomes. Okay.
Yeah.
Final question to everyone. What would you say are the pros and cons of your jobs? So, for example, the best bits and the worst bits that you find with all of your work. I'll start with Lucy.
Yeah, I think I already touched on that a little bit, didn't I? Sort of pros were, kind of using your science. I thought if I'd got to the end of a degree, I didn't want to leave it go. As an external patent attorney, the technology you get exposed to, which I heavily agree with Cristian's point just then, don't take on work you can't do, and we would never do that either, but there is lots of work you can do you might not know about yet, so there's lots of things that you can get exposed to that are really fascinating, that involve you doing lots of research and kind of figuring out the meets and bounds of the technology in the area. So that's really, really good. Compensation is good. The downside is the exams, and kind of it can be really pressured and quite stressful if you're doing some high-end litigation and you're about to lose the patent across the entirety of Europe, protecting something that's making hundreds of millions. There's some skin in that game, even if it's not coming out of your wallet. So fortunately that hasn't happened to me yet, but to be on the brink of that is pretty nerve-wracking, and you can expect the odd sleepless night or not. So it's quite varied from lots of perspectives.
Thank you so much. And Maritza?
So there's quite a lot of benefits and limitations, to working on your own. Just some that I think are, things that you really want to think about if you're interested in this type of career. imposter syndrome is something that everyone battles, right? Especially when you're, like Lucy said, really held accountable as an individual for these things. So imposter syndrome, of course, regardless of how much education you have, is something we all struggle with. So my advice is, accept it, know your limitations, know what you're good at, and just keep learning all the time. Don't stagnate. Another limitation of being a freelancer in general is, we've talked about technical skills and writing skills, but you also have to have people skills, because sometimes you have clients that, send you quite a lot of work, but aren't the best at paying. They're always a couple months behind, and you have to really know how to balance that. You don't want to lose the client, but you need to know how to balance and be able to say, yes, I'm happy to take on another project, but just as a reminder, you're 60 days, behind on your last invoice, or things like that. That's, as a freelancer, that's something that you need to be able to balance. So maybe those two limitations. And then, I'm definitely an introvert, and I'm very self-motivated. That's just my personality. Know yourself. If you sometimes need a little bit of a nudge, maybe working alone or working for yourself isn't the ideal situation. Maybe being a medical writer for an agency can give you that nudge that you might need.
Thank you so much. Good advice. And Cristian?
Yeah. One of the bigger cons that I'll say in terms of the work I'm doing, it is very much clearly, as it's been said already here, it's you get what you put in, right? So if you're trying to do this more full time, you're going to have to really put yourself out there, and if you're not very good at marketing yourself yet, that's very tough. But in terms of the pros, to me, it lets me have that taste of industry without being locked into what people call you research what you work for. I have the freedom to go from different fields and do many different things at once, right? Versus if you were to go work as a staff scientist at a company, is whatever is being assigned to you, that's yours, right? So it lets you have some type of freedom and lets you explore more. But again, you only get paid as much as you put in, right? So if you don't take a contract for a month, you don't get paid for a month.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much to all of you. It's been wonderful hearing about all your experiences and to actually meet you in person as well. Thank you. I'll pass it back to Fatima to do the closing. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. Can you see my slides?
Yes.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for this wonderful conversation. It's really been great to hear from all of you. The tips that you shared, they're all amazing. The conversation was really great. Thank you so much. Thank you for our audience who actually stayed with us until now. And we would just like to remind you here that this workshop has been recorded and it will be uploaded in our YouTube channel, along with other 10 previous workshop that we worked on for this professional development skills series. So you could definitely go to IUPAC YouTube channel and check any of those workshops that previously uploaded. This workshop again will be uploaded very soon. Also, we have a couple of events we want to let you know about and invite you for the 4th IYCN Experiment Outreach Competition. This competition is actually an opportunity for you to submit your favorite outreach experiment, and the winner will get published online and will be actually translated into many languages, and the winner will be received a 500 prize in cash. The deadline of this competition is actually June 25. Also, we have a new upcoming project in the IYCN. The aim of this project is to break down scientific topics to public, and we have the Science Cafe coming up in July 1st. we will be hosting Dr. Javier Garcia Martinez, the president of IUPAC, who will introduce us to the IUPAC Top 10 Emerging Technologies. Then after that, we will be having a bi-monthly cafe. We will be discuss one of those top 10 emerging technologies. So stay tuned and register for the first cafe. So if you want to learn more about the new emerging technologies. Also, the IYCN is actually having a joint program with the IUPAC. The project, the upcoming project is called Global Conversation on Sustainability, and this will start this September and continue to be an annual event as well. So stay tuned for that, and we will definitely be happy to hear from you, to hear if you have any programs or events you want us to be organizing. Please contact us and we'll be happy to hear back from you. And with that, thank you again, everyone. Thank you for our audience. Thank you for our amazing speakers for joining us in this workshop, and we'll be happy to see you in another occasion. Thank you.